Hello everyone, happy to see you for this January session, first session of the year. We are going to be doing a simple, cute little motif today, just an easy way to start the year. So it's this little one here-ish. And I'm going to show you two ways of drawing it. The one I used for this one and another one I found more recently, just a slightly different proportion. I really like playing with this little motif, trying to find, various construction ways. As often in Gothic architecture, there are many possible versions of this. So I'm going to show you two, and then we can do one of them on, I don't think it should be too long, so I think I'm going to do one of them on a colored toned paper so that we can do a bit of shading on that if you like, just a little sample. Right, so let's get started. And by the way, for those who were there last year, I didn't end up sending my postcards. I don't know if you guys did, but I didn't manage to do more of the one we did in the session. And I did give the one I finished in the session to my mum, so she was happy about that. All right, so let's switch the camera. I'm feeling rusty. I haven't filmed a session in a month, which is not that long, but feels like ages. So bear with me. Here we are. No, here. There. So switching the camera around. So that's a little motif we're going to be looking at. That kind of shape is oops, what have we done again here? Can be called like a curved triangle, so it's based off an equilateral triangle. The math name for it is a rouleau triangle. I'm going to write that in the chat because, French name. So I think it's spelled like this. So he was a French mathematician who talked about this kind of triangle, but really I'm going to say curved triangle because that's easier, even for me. So that's the main shape, and then we can call it a cusped rouleau triangle because, as you might know for some of you, those little points here are called cusps in Gothic architecture kind of thing. And the way we draw this circle, if it's a circle or if it's an arch, I'll come to that, will influence, like the proportion we choose for this circular shape will influence whether the cusp is a point or more of a straight kind of thing at the end. So, and that's what the variations can do. And this kind of shape tends to be like a small detail within a bigger Gothic design. Sometimes they end up being very tiny on the corners and things, so I thought it was nice to do like a bigger version of it to just really get into it and give more details for it. So I'm gonna grab some just white paper first for the two different constructions. And put that aside. So it's going to be a very simple base for this construction. We are going to start off with a vertical line. Vertical matters in this case because it's sixfold, so the way you place your first line will influence the orientation of the figure. If you started with a horizontal, then it would be kind of sideways. So vertical line wherever you like on your page. How am I going to do this? Doesn't really matter, does it? Let's do it in the middle vertically. So as I said, whichever way around fits your paper. Doesn't have to be a specific size. It's quite a simple drawing. I'm drawing on A4, French size, European size. So currently, so that's 21 by about 30 centimeters, but just do whatever you like. Just maybe not like A2, that would be maybe over the top for this little drawing. Just a nice vertical line to start with. Ah, and my ruler is dirty. What's going on? Eraser. Here. And we're going to place a circle on that. And again, this can be as big as you like. Just this first circle is the one that's containing the roller triangle. So the points of the triangle are going to end up on that circle. And so I'm just going to open to about here. Oops. Yep. And draw a circle. And then as it's a triangle, we're going to use, as an equilateral one, we're going to use a six-fold division, just very basic division to start off. So with the radius of the circle, we are going to, from the vertical line where it crosses the circle, we're going to mark the circle on either side, just to get our six intersections on the circumference of the circle. So 2 of them are given by the vertical line, and then now we have 2 more on each side, so we should have 6 equal arcs or part of the circle. Can you see, or is it too much light on this thing? Let's adjust a little bit. I don't know if it's my screen. Maybe that's a bit better. Okay. And then once you have your six-fold division, we'll just add in the symmetry axis, so joining opposite points on the circle, going through the center, so we get 6 slices of cake. So that's a very easy start, and from here we're just going to draw an equilateral triangle pointing up. So very simple. Oops. And from here, we're gonna take the compass again and fit a circle inside of that triangle. So the radius is from the center to the middle of the sides of the triangle, where it's cut by the symmetry axis. and just one. Oh, I think I've been saying this for about 4 months, but I need to buy a new this pen. And I did look for it last time I went to the art shop, but they didn't have this one in stock. So, anyways, so here, cute little circle, and just contemplating whether I put a full star in there or just a triangle. I think just a triangle would be alright, like I did in the example. And so another triangle pointing up inside the small circle. Okay, so we've laid the ground, and I'll come back to that small triangle in a little while, but first we're going to put in the big roller triangle. Let's use some blue. So for this curved triangle, it's very easy. The radius is one full side of the triangle, and the centers are the points of the triangle. So just put your compass point on one angle, open to another angle, and use that to draw an arc, joining the two opposite angles. And then do that from the three points of the triangle, the big one. Alright, so we have the main shape, and from there the question is, what center do we use for the cusps? And the radius is always going to be whatever the center tangent to that big triangle, curved triangle. And depending how we place our centers, as I mentioned, the cusp is going to end in a point further out or closer in, and if the circle for the cusp is small enough, then it will end up into, they won't meet, and then it would end up in a flat end. And that point for the cusp will also change shape when we add layers of thickness. So we'll come to that when we add different thickness. You'll see what I mean. So the easiest way would be to have one center and draw like a circle that fits into the tangent, that tangents the curved triangle. And if I just do a test version of this, kind of the obvious center here would be the point of the triangle here. And I don't remember what proportion it gives if we do this. Maybe it's close enough. Just let's have a look. Right. So if I did, I'm not going to draw this, or I'm going to draw it in pencil and erase it. But if I was to place my compass point here, let me zoom in a bit, and find a radius that tangents my curved triangle up there, and I was going to use that, see how it doesn't meet with the symmetry axis, and that would be alright. That could be one version of it, that could be one proportion. But then if I add in several layers, this is going to end up being a very thick band here. So if from here I have a whole thickness that's about this much, then it's going to end up being kind of here and here. So see how this ends up being very big compared to what I have here, which ends in a point. So that's not the one we're going to use here, but it obviously could work. Also, I tend to think that on such a small shape, well, here we've drawn it big, but like in a bigger motif, this could be a very tiny shape. It would be sort of easier to just have one center, like I've just done it here. However, Gothic being Gothic, in many examples, it's not actually one center, it's actually two centers, more like an arch. So it looks like a circle, like those cusp little leaf shapes often look like a circle, but they often are not a circle. It can be more like an arch with two centers. So that's what I've done here. We have two centers. They're very close to each other, but it just gives this a little bit more pointy shape. And I've seen that in some examples where they kind of show where the centers are but not the construction, and so I know this is used. So that's what we're going to do. And the radius for that is going to be so let me know this compass. I think I have a drawing where I've done this like tiny 100 times. I'll try and find it at the end to show you. Not 100 times, but like many times. Right, so if I remember this correctly, yes, so you're going to get your compass, and on the smallest triangle, put the compass point on one angle and open to half of one side of the triangle. So from the angle to the symmetry axis that cuts the side of the triangle. Okay. Then with this radius on your compass, this one, we're going to move the compass point to where the small circle is cut by the symmetry axis, but that's not a point of the triangle, the small one. And we're going to mark where our radius cuts the point of the triangle on either side, like so. So I get those intersections here and here. And if I was to carry on this arc, you'd see that it would tangent the symmetry axis. Could do it if you want to see that kind of thing. Right, so far so good. And then you do that on the three other equivalent points. So on the symmetry axis where they cut the small circle, but that's not the point of a triangle. So here as well. And again, you mark the small triangle on both sides from that point. Like that. Let me double check on my example. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'll come back to that. Right, and again, when you have two centers like this for some sort of arch or cusp details like this, they can either cross or not cross. And what I mean by that is that the center of on the right could be used for an arc on the right, or it can also be used for an arc on the left. And in this case, it's going to cross. So the center on the right is going to be used for the arc on the left-hand side. And there are two ways of doing this. If you're getting used to that method, you could directly put the compass point on the intersection here and then adjust. So I'm turning the wheel here. Adjust your compass sort of on the spot, moving the compass to make sure you're tangenting the other curve. If you find this hard, or if you want a more sort of precise intersection, the way to find the exact tangent point that will give you the radius is to align that center that we want to use here with the center of the curve you're going to tangent. So this outer curve here, the center is down there, so I'm going to align that. So I'm aligning this and this. And once you've that aligned, you can draw the line if you want, but you just really need where that cuts the outer curved triangle out there, and that's going to give you more exact reference point to adjust your radius on your compass. And so when you have this now on your compass, you can draw that curve. So just draw from the symmetry axis here to your tangent point onto your curve out there, like that. And then you can use the same radius from the other center, the other intersection, and it should also tangent your curve on the other side, and then start from the tangent maybe, and go down and stop when you hit the symmetry axis like this, and we're starting to have our little leafy shape. And you can do the same on the other points of the triangle. Remember that the centers cross, so maybe if you're way out, maybe you've placed the compass point on the wrong center. So remember that it's this center for the curve on the other side of the symmetry axis, like that. And here we have our little cusp curved triangle. Maybe I would just, if you, from memory's sake, you could always sort of line up the center here to the tangent point and just make a little line just to remember that the centers cross and that this center goes for this curve here. So that's one proportion for it, and I think that's the one we're going to give the thickness to, like this one. But just wondering if I'm doing this here or if I'm doing it on a colored paper. Let's carry on here, and I'll do some shading here, and then you can do a version on colored paper afterwards if you want. And I'm going to use a different color. How about this? Does it work in my compass if I use this? No. different. I'm going to use a green, I think. Yeah, let's use this green. So basically the blue line I've done here doesn't really show on this version. So just to explain where we're going, the blue line here is kind of the structure line, or the skeleton line, and it disappears when you give a thickness. It depends what kind you're doing, but in this case, it's under this white pencil kind of thing, and it's in between those two thinner white lines. So to give all this dimension here, we need to double that line once and then twice, or sometimes you start with the bigger one and then you do the small one. So we'll do that. And proportions for that could vary as always. We're just going to use things from the drawing here to give the same thickness that I gave on this original drawing. And so I'm going to use this green. It's the same centers, and then we are going to use different radiuses. So I'm going to start off with the bigger thickness, I think, and the measure for this one I used by the same center here, and this time I'm going to adjust my compass to here, so the middle of the side of the triangle here, and I'm going to carry that measure back all the way. It's handy here because I have my little tangent line here, so that's the tangent point between the two curves, so I can stop on that tangent line, and we actually are going to use that in a second. But first, while you have this radius on here, you can go on and add this to the other side. So notice I'm stopping sort of roughly in the area of the tangent. You could mark the tangent point exactly everywhere to know exactly where that stops, depending how you want to do this, but I tend to just do it like this. And we're going to link that afterwards with when you're also going to give this thickness to the curved triangle. Right, and in case you haven't done that line here previously, maybe do it now because it's going to be useful to transfer the thickness in various areas. So again, this was done aligning the center for this curve, the cusp curve, and the center for the curved triangle. So here and here. I don't know if you can see down here. Yes, there. And I'm going to just make that line a little bit bigger, so going out there and then inside, and then we can use that to mark the different variations in the thickness. And we're going to use the mini template methods that I like to use. If you have a tiny compass, you could use a tiny compass, or if you're happy to draw small. But here I'm just going to use this. So basically any piece of paper, a post-it, whatever, just a straight edge here that you can line up with the little line we've done and mark the width between the initial line and the thickness, and then you can transfer it to the other side of the structure line like this. And this is a good area to do this because this line is common to the cusp and to the main shape, so it's going to serve as reference for the big triangle as well as the cusp. And yeah, so let's finish the cusp first and then we'll do the big triangle. So the outer thickness is only going to show in this little portion here for the cusp, in this little kind of other kind of curved triangle. Sometimes that outer thickness would completely disappear here if it was a bit bigger, but here we can still catch it, so we're going to do that. So same center again, and I open my compass to the intersection we've just found on this little tangent line outside of the shape. And we're just going to do a little line here. We don't know exactly where that stops yet, but sort of roughly a little line like this. And you can do the same from all the centers. And it's basically a parallel curve. So going on like this, remember which center goes for which side it crosses. Like that, and then we can do the curved triangle. So the centers for that curved triangle are the points of that triangle. And again, so we're using the reference point we found up there. And if I start with the inner thickness, so from here, so I pick up from the curve of the cusp, and then I follow the point, and it ends on the vertical line like that. And I can do it down here as well. It should catch up with the tangent of that curve. And same from the 3 points like this, so we get our little pointy shape. Like that. And also, sorry, I forgot, with the same radius and same centers, we also can close off the little triangle we had started in between the petals. So this is on the same curve, this part. And then the same thing goes for the outer curve. So coming back to my little measure here, the same centers, but then I open to this mark outside, and I can do a full curve this time. And I need to go all the way outside the circle until I hit this vertical line, and then out there I just need to figure out past the symmetry axis, so you do get the point. So that's for the widest thickness. Any questions so far? Let me know if there's anything I need to repeat or explain. But to make this a bit more intricate, with more definition, so we're going to do another level of thickness, smaller this time, so it's essentially the same steps but with different radiuses. And this time, so I'm going to use pink for this other thickness. You could use the same, you could use no color, you could use the same color you've used for the first thickness. And this time I'm going to choose something that's much closer to my original line, to my blue line. And so I'm starting off on the same spot up here, so from the top right center there. And on the left side, I'm adjusting my radius to here, so to where the symmetry axis crosses the side of the triangle. It's pretty close to my blue line. So that's my kind of reference. You could make this a bit wider if you prefer. It's up to you, but I'm gonna just use this. And I just need it here, but I'm also going to mark my tangent line up there so that I can use that reference. So just do this arc like that, and then mark your reference line up here. And we do the same curve with all the centers. All those curves should parallel each other. If you can say parallel for curves, I guess you can, but and then same process as we did earlier. I'm going to use my small template again, line it up here, and I can sticky note sticking here, and so I can line up the same way to start with, and I can also mark the other side if I want. So I have the three lines of the biggest width. Let's make this closer. And it's the same process for this inner smaller thickness. I mark that on my post-it as well, and I transfer it to this little width here. I'm transferring it to the other side of my structure line, and I can mark that like that. If I wanted to use this mini ruler for something else, I could just line it up properly here and mark all the relevant points, so I have the kind of a general guide for this drawing. But in this case, I just mainly need to have the little mark on the other side. And so same centers for the cusp again. We're using this new reference point like that to add the new thickness. You could also pretty much do this by eye. Sometimes that's what I do when I do my white and red drawings on brown paper for selling courses. I like to do the red outline, which is like an extra thickness, but I can't really be bothered to draw it all in pencil, so I tend to eyeball the width here, and it can work. Especially when it's small, it's easier to make it equal, I find. And you didn't see the bottom part, sorry, it was zoomed in. Here's what it's looking like now. And then, same as earlier, back to the points of the big triangle to add the thickness to the big triangle, and catching up our measure here from our little tangent line and adding in the point, and also in between the leaves. And here we have this triangle shapes as well, and here. So it's like 3 segments on the inside, like that. And finally, again, same centers, but this time we can open to the other mark outside there to get the full arc out there. So like that. So we should have a blue curve, and on either side, quite close to it, the pink curves, and then more out there, the green ones. How is it going? Working out?
Lucy, it's Marty.
Yeah.
Everything's working out for me except the green little triangles that you have inside the, yes, those.
Mm-hmm. What's not working out?
I don't think I got the bottom of the point pieces of the triangle. I think I got the top, but I'm not getting the point, or maybe my top's in the wrong spot.
You mean your centers here?
Well, can you just go through
Yes,
the steps?
I will. I will.
Okay. Sorry to take us.
No worries at all. That's what we're here for. And so basically, you mean more the point inside I guess, that part that goes in like this. Yeah,
the green tree, yeah, that
more,
part.
but that's pointy part. Okay, so basically, this is the only part that we see of the outer green thickness from the cusp. So it's the same center as my little leaf shape here. And so I did the inner curve is this green one. And then the outer here, same center, is what gives me this. So depending if you had a different width, this might end up kind of disappearing if the widths were bigger.
I think that's what my problem ended up, because mine disappeared, or inverted. I ended up with my
Did you, so you have the two centers on the triangle point here?
Yes.
And then from the right hand side one, the inner thickness here is to this intersection with the small triangle.
Yes, yeah, I got that part.
Got that right. So yeah, it's just a matter of transferring that outside, and then depending, maybe you got it a little bit wider and it disappeared. I don't know. But yeah, basically that's what it is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Remarks? No. So essentially, we've done this. So the only difference is that, so I've done this on colored paper, I've done all the construction steps in pencil, and the only lines that I did in white were my green curves and my pink curves, okay? And the blue I left in pencil, and I even went over it with the white. And then here for coloring, let me zoom in so you can see properly what I've done. Here, so I basically, when I add color on a colored pencil on this dark on a whatever color paper, I like to use a white and a color that's close to the color of the paper, but you could obviously choose whatever you like. And I try to think in terms of contrast mainly, and the parts that I want to highlight. So I don't really think in terms of realistic shading. I know that a lot of people like or would like to do realistic shading, but it's not really what I do. But mainly, if the thing is, if I put a white pencil close to a white line, it's going to sort of widen that white. It's not going to contrast it. So that's the main thing you want to remember, because putting a white in between those two lines kind of blends with the white. It doesn't, so he makes this look as a one thing. I don't know if what I'm saying is making a lot of sense, but I'm going to try and explain. The other side of that is that I use this, I think it's this one. So that's sanguine, sanguine. I don't know how you say that in English. Sanguine in French. Here. Now you can see, you can write in the chat. Anyway, so it's a kind of a coral brick red-ish that I like because it's a little warm, warmer than the brown, and so it makes a nice shadow but kind of a highlight at the same time. And I use that close to the white here, so that makes it that it contrasts the white and it looks like a shadow. It looks like it's this is kind of pushed back, and it makes this side of the white look like a sharp edge, if that makes sense. And same goes for the inside shadow here. I used a darker color, so kind of this burnt sienna brown here. And so it's darker color, so it'll make for stronger contrast depending how strong you do the pencil, obviously. So here my idea was that I wanted this thinner sort of width to look like kind of maybe a rounded thing a bit, or at least a one band thing. And so I kind of pushed a shadow behind it by adding this color close to the white, and then it's just like a light gradient so that it fades, and then the outer white line is just doesn't have anything next to it. So that's how I did that. And I also added those lines here with this same kind of brick color. I could have done it with a darker color to make them more obvious, but I wanted to keep them kind of subtle. I'm going to show that on our example, just how, if you're not used to it, how to draw those little curves. So that's basically this curve here. It's very faint, but and my hand is in the shadow. But so here, this curved little line gives a bit more depth and a little bit of a stone effect or a 3D effect. And this is not really not worth it to construct it with a compass. I think you could kind of find a center for it, but it's not worth it. This line in the stonework happens because of the way the masons cut the stone. They don't draw this, it's just how they cut it makes it that it ends up in that line, if I'm not mistaken. And I've done it with this color here because this would be like a hollow, like a valley fold if you're into origami. And so how to draw this, basically, I do it freehand, but the trick, especially when you have a wider area like here, is to remember that this curve, this extra curve you're going to be adding to link the 2 points here, is always midways between the 2 other curves, my 2 pink curves here. So what I do sometimes is that I make myself like a dotted line. So I'll start maybe here, I'll be like, okay, so that's kind of in between my 2 pink curves. That's in between, that's in between, that's in between, and maybe that's in between. And then I will link them afterwards. It's easier to do it like this than to sort of try and aim for the curve right away. You might end up being a bit like this, which is not really in the middle. So really just in between, in between, in between, and then like that. And then here's just a straight line. So this, even without adding shading, this instantly kind of gives our brain a little bit of an idea of the 3D. Yeah. Any questions on that? We can come back to it at the end, but I do want to show you the other construction as well. But if you have a question now, feel free to ask. Yeah, I guess the main point for the shading is really what I said, is I try to think in terms of contrast. So if I put a shadow in a dark color next to a white line, is going to put emphasis on that area. So that's what you have to bear in mind. Okay, so just a different little construction for a variation on this, mainly because I've been bugged by the idea that I wanted to find something that gives me a version for this that's only one center, so it's a little bit less long to draw if you're drawing this a number of times, but that will give me a cusp that ends up right on this intersection of the triangle and the circle just to satisfy my brain, basically. Uh, so I've been looking for a construction for that center, and I think I found something that works, so I'm gonna share that with you. Yeah, maybe it's been used, maybe it's not been used, but just I like this little variation on the construction. So different paper. It really is the same start, so I'm gonna start off with a vertical line in the middle of my page, whatever orientation for the page. Like that. Grabbing my notes. So just like the other, a circle to start with. You could just get exactly the same circle by measuring on your previous drawing, if you like that. And then just drawing that circle on our line. And again, so circle, and then with the radius of that circle, we are going to put in a sixfold division from the vertical line, just marking off the circle on either side. This won't take very long, just a little variation. And once you have your marks, you can add in the symmetry axes. Just checking my construction. Yeah, okay. And we are going to add in our first triangle. So pointing up, one equilateral triangle like that. And then the next steps are going to be different than the other construction. But the big curved rouleau triangle is the same. So the centers are the points of the triangle, and the radius is the full side of the triangle. And so you can draw a triangle like that. from that curved triangle, so from the curves, I'm going to draw a new triangle. So it's going to be pointing down, and I'm linking, so where the curved triangle is cut by the symmetry axis, like so. So it's overlapping the other triangle. Right, and just as a reminder, what I'm looking for here is just a one center, so that is going to be on this vertical symmetry axis. So one center here, that gives me a curve that is tangent to the curved triangle, and that ends on this specific intersection here. So the side of my big triangle being cut by the symmetry axis. So I want a curve that does exactly this with a center on this axis. So we're going to see if my solution works, or kind of works. I haven't checked this mathematically because I'm not an actual math person, but I'd be curious to know if it's exact or not. So the reference point we're going to use for that are, I'm going to put my compass point on, so my second smaller triangle pointing down, the down point here, and the radius I'm going to use where the two triangles intersect. So these points here and here, and I'm going to do an arc using that. Makes sense. So center on the point of the small triangle, and then radius to the intersections between the two triangles there. And you can do that little curve on the three sides. You could circle the points of the smaller triangle just to remember the centers for those curves. And now, ideally, this intersection of the curve and the axis should be our center. That gives us what we want. To find the radius, it should work with just this, so you shouldn't need to do the alignment, and we'll see if we need to tweak or not tweak. That is the question. But just as a reminder, if I was to line up the center for the curve I'm looking for and the center for the curve I have already, so this and this, and then I could mark it on the triangle, that would give me the tangent point. So let's see this center, and I can catch my radius from the intersection I was wanting to hit, and then we can, yes, it works. Ta-da! And so the same center works for both sides, like that. And that just makes my brain happy. And I'm happy because it's not a too complicated construction. It works quite well. We could be worth it to see, you know, what it looks like if you add all the thicknesses as well. I'm just going to add the bigger thickness to see how the point ends, because I don't think I've checked that. So I hope it's working out on your side, this construction. Yeah, is it tangent and hitting the intersection? Which was my goal. Silence. I don't know if it works.
It did on mine.
Cool. And like I said, I will eventually. I'm going to try and learn GeoGebra, which is kind of one of the softwares that are used for geometry on the computer. I've downloaded GeoGebra. I've signed up for a mini course by Sandy Kurt on GeoGebra. I still haven't done it. We'll get there eventually, small step by small steps. And here I'm just going to do the same circle I did on the other one. So the circle that's within my biggest triangle, just to get the same width for the outer thing. That makes sense. Oh gosh, I really need to change this bit. And it's the same little triangle that I had on the other construction. Just so I get this same intersection here. So from my center for the cusp, if I go to this radius here, ooh, no, wrong center, sorry. Yeah. So it's cute because that inner thickness also goes through the intersection we used for. Thanks, Mark. See you around. I'm just discovering it as I'm drawing it with you right now. I hadn't done a thickness on this one. But using the same intersection on this triangle here to, I mean the same as here because I've added the same circle and triangle. To add my thickness, you can see that it seems to go through the intersection between the two triangles, which is the intersection we used for the pink curves that give us a center. That all makes sense. So we could directly, without drawing the small circle and the smallest triangle, we could directly from our centers use that intersection to get the same width here for the thickness. If that's clear. Let me know if I need to repeat any of all that. I went maybe a bit faster on those last steps. And so like on the other one, I'm just going to make my tangent area a little bit longer here. And transfer the thickness. Where is my... Ha. Is it actually the same? Yep, it is the same. So I'm adding in the thickness for the big triangle as well. I'm doing this to see how different it looks from the other one, if it's worth, you know, doing the 2-center thing, or if this looks essentially the same, which is probably the case. Not close enough. So I've done the inner and outer on the big triangle using my reference here, and I'm just going to do the outer on the cusps, just to, oh yeah, the triangle here. See how it almost is nothing. The triangle between the cusps. So if we compare the two, let's zoom out. That's interesting. I like both, but they are slightly different. I could see why someone would decide one or the other. So I have the same size circle, the same size of the roller triangle, and I have the same width for both of them. And so the cusp, the point on the thickness ends up on the same intersection. The main difference is that, so here our petal shape is a bit thinner and here it's wider, and therefore the space that's between the two petals, so that this kind of triangular negative space here is much smaller than here. That's all the geometry geekiness. So yeah, I think often those 2-center variations are used to make this look a bit thinner and a bit less wide. I'm going to see if I can find the image I was referring to when I did many of them on one rows. I'm going to find that. it's not where it was supposed to be. That's for tidying up, but I'm sure I have an image online. I'll find the image. I did that for a course with the Gentle Penman with 3 mini rows that I did last year, if some of you were part of that. And I might redo that on my own website in a while. Don't know when that yet. Here. So if I can. That's not the best image ever, but let's open that. And that's better. Right, so if I can share that here, ta-da! No, not the window I wanted to open. Hang on. This. So this was the rose. It's a fairly simple rose if you've done other Gothic or tangent circle stuff before. So the course was more meant as an introduction, but basically it's 6 tangent circles, sorry, with a 7th same size circle in the center, and then within it each tangent circle you have 3 tangent circles, and then within each of those 3 tangent circles you have 4 tangent circles basically. So that's like a layout that's can be used in many different ways. Here it's used in a very kind of full-on way. You could do the same thing and do many different things with it, but I'm not going to get into that now. Just want to draw your attention on all those curved triangles happening everywhere in between the tangent circles. So this is what I did here. And you can see on this drawing I used a 2-center version. I don't know if it was the closest one, maybe, yeah, I don't know. Oh, yeah, possibly, maybe, I don't know which one would work better, but you could make variations. So, but just those ones were very tiny to draw. Sorry, my neighbors are making noise. And 1, 2, 3 times, so 21 small ones plus 6 bigger ones. That was quite a lot of this to draw. Yeah, but that was fun. All right, let's come back here. Message. Okay, I'll get to your question, Gerard, but any other questions related to what we've done today, or any question? So for you, Gerard, with asking, I have a little different question to the end of the cafe. Every time I tear a page out of the Paint On Mix Media block, the last corner is quite bent. How to solve this? Is there a proper way to tear it out of a block? This is with A4, so I really like to know for an A3 or A2 size. Thanks in advance. Great question. I think I do have the same issue. My personal answer is I don't really mind, so I just keep on doing that. But I'm going to give you another answer. So let me switch the camera again. And let's zoom out quite a bit. All right, so this is a paint on block. So for those who don't know, it's this brand brand is Clairefontaine, and it's a kind of a mixed media blog. They're quite nice, quite thick paper. It's nice for drawing geometry and do kind of a final version. They have many different colors and finishes, so highly recommend for like a nice finished version. And basically the question is, let's do an example, that when you, this is an A3, so we get a good example. So when you tear the page, that didn't happen so much here. I guess the way I do it is I start tearing and then I put my other hand under and I kind of help it along. If you're still having issues, the proper way is to do like on watercolor blocks. I don't know if you have ever used a watercolor block that's fully glued on four sides. You use doesn't need to be as fancy as this one. A paper cutter, so it's not very sharp. So this is really not sharp. So you don't risk sort of cutting into the paper, but then you can just not pull the page up and just leave it kind of close, and then you can at an angle like this kind of go gently and do this. Also the problem happens sometimes, like if you go further along in the block, then the glue from the first pages can be in the way, so you can get rid of the excess glue on top. That might help. Yeah. Right, and thanks, Don. Yeah. Any other question? I'm gonna give you the little heads up for general news, unless there is anything else. Let's go back here. Not here. Right. So, thanks. Next Geometry Cafe. I haven't given the dates yet, I think, because it was a bit hard for me to find a good date. February is a little bit packed because I'm going to England. I'm going to be teaching for the School of Traditional Arts in London. This is where I did my MA, so I will be teaching geometry on the first week. I'm leaving Sunday, and then I'm teaching the MA students the week after that, and then I'm going on a little field trip with Clarissa, which is going to be fun, and then the weekend after that I will be teaching the Cologne Arch thing, if you have seen that coming around. So I think, and then the weekend after that I'm busy with non-geometry things. So I think the best bet, I'm going to announce it, will be on Sunday the 8th. So that's in 2 weeks, actually. So I need to find a topic, but so that's going to be from where I'm staying in London. Hopefully it have good Wi-Fi. I think it will be. So I think that's what it's going to be. So I'm going to announce it soon, and then I've drafted the dates for pretty much the rest of the year. So I will share that as well. So yeah, and just in general of the plan of my online courses, I've not announced it much yet, but I will be redoing some old courses a little bit. So I'm going to redo a series on Strasbourg Cathedral, which I had an old version of the Rose on my website, but I think I'm going to do a little bit so new version of the Rose and some side drawing from the same cathedral, and some other things. The reason being, so this version was a bit old and I wanted to get a new one, and also I have a lot of big projects this year, so I didn't want to have too many new constructions to work on. One of the big projects, as some of you might have seen in my December newsletter, is that Clarissa, Grandi, and myself are planning a field trip in France, in Amiens. So it will be an in-person course in Amiens in September or October. We're not quite sure yet. So as soon as we have dates and stuff, we'll send that out. But just spreading the message already. And so there will be also some online things around Amiens, because I'll be working out on that kind of geometry. So yeah, we will see how this plays out. But that's the exacting project of 2026. So all right, so that's all for today. And thanks for being here, and I'll see you all next time. Yeah. Have a great end of your Sunday.
Thanks a lot. Really enjoyed it.
Great.